How's it going, everybody? It's Jordan Mapes here. Welcome back to another episode of Just Stuff with my good buddy Seb. How's it going, Seb?
Man, it's going good. I'm excited to get talking about another race of F1. I'm loving how the season's starting, and I'm ready to get right into it.
Absolutely, same here, man. So we're gonna do something very similar to last episode. We're gonna go through and just give our driver rankings for China. Obviously, we had a sprint this time around. Going blurry for a second. Uh, But yeah, there's a lot of different outcomes as opposed to Australia. Different things came into the mix, so it'll be interesting to see how these drivers have improved, not improved, but we'll just jump right into it. Seb, we'll start you off because you're the one that had the list made, and I'm just going to go off and give my takes after you name off a driver.
All right, for sure. So right now for my top one, I got the Kick Saubers. We're going to start off with, starting with Gabriel Bortoleto, who overall he had a rough weekend, finishing P18 in the sprint, finishing P14 in the race itself, getting out qualified by Hulkenberg. It wasn't that great. Personally, I gave him a two. He did struggle. He did have that little spin back on lap one. Did really impact my rating, but better than some people. At least he didn't disqualify, but it wasn't a great performance by him at all.
That's fair, that's fair. And I agree with everything you said. However, he did beat his teammate in both the sprint and the feature, so I gave him a little bit of nod to that. I'm still what did he qualify in the sprint? It was like 14th, right?
Yeah, it was
Yeah,
about.
he had a good qualifying performance, at least in the sprint. I mean, P14 still in the kick. We expected this to be the worst car, compared to the whole grid. So the fact they still getting up there, I give him a little bit of bonus points. I gave him a 4 out of 10 personally because he was able to beat his teammate in both races.
Okay, for sure. So, what are your thoughts on Hulkenberg's performance over the weekend then?
I mean, not much better. I mean, he was one off in both the sprint and the feature. It wasn't really great out of the kicks by any means. I have Hulkenberg as a 3 out of 10.
Okay. I also have Hulkenberg as a 3 out of 10, but I thought he did do better than Bortoleto, even though he did have worse positions in the race. He did end up getting a P12 in one of the qualifying sessions, which I mean is an exceptional performance of the Kick Sauber itself. The race, I'm not going to read too much into. Both cars were struggling; they weren't getting it anywhere anyway. I'm
Mhm.
not like one position isn't going to change my mind too much on that, but both were struggling over the race as a whole anyway. But I think Hulkenberg managed at least to get that P12. That did impress me.
That's fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
And next up, we can look into the racing bulls now. And what are your thoughts on Yuki Tsunoda's performance in that race?
So it wasn't as exciting as last weekend was, obviously. Definitely had his moments here and there. Personally, it wasn't. It was slightly above average. Obviously, the race didn't go his way. He had a good sprint, got some points up in the sprint. But it wasn't. They didn't look like they were as fast as they were last weekend. I'm sure it'll bounce back next week, but so far I have him as 6 out of 10.
Okay, and I personally defer on kind of the pace itself. I do think the pace was there for the car, but the strategy wasn't. And I thought Yuki Tsunoda's pace was exceptional, especially throughout the feature race where he was in a position to get really good points. I mean, we're possibly looking at Yuki Tsunoda P5 if they pick the right strategy for him based off the disqualifications and whatnot. But he did get that P6 in the sprint itself. Great performance. P16 in the feature. I'm giving him a 7 out of 10. Still not higher than much higher than you, but I do think a lot higher based on the discussion we're having here on Yuki Tsunoda.
Yeah, that
But
makes sense.
yeah, and then for Isaac Hadjar, I went a little bit lower on him. Again, he had the same situation. He was looking relatively quick. Didn't perform as good as Yuki Tsunoda throughout. I went a 6, but I do think his competitive comparison was almost similar, but not up to par with Tsunoda's throughout the race.
That makes sense. I also have him as a 6 out of 10. It was nice to see him bounce back after last week. Definitely looked better than he did in Australia, of course, because we never even saw him in Australia. So, but yeah, the
Absolutely.
both paces were similar. Yuki obviously did have, a slightly better weekend. I don't think it was really enough to differentiate them for me personally. That's why I have them as the same rating. But yeah, it was just nice to see him drive this time, man.
Yeah, for sure. Now for the next one, I think this is the hardest person to talk about. over the weekend, just because, especially in the race, they didn't really race. It's Fernando Alonso. Personally, I don't think he did really anything too wrong. He did get out qualified by Stroll, which I do have to look down upon that specifically. But I put him at a three just because he didn't really do much to his own doing. He still did get a P10 in the sprint itself, which isn't too bad. Still got outperformed by Stroll in the sprint, but nonetheless, the P10 still solid. The DNF brake failure wasn't really much of his own doing, so I can't really blame him there.
Yeah, and I look at him a little bit higher during the weekend. Obviously, the race was nothing of his own accord. I do think the pace was there. They had pretty similar pace to Stroll. Obviously, he did get outperformed by Stroll, but I put him at a 5 out of 10. It was very average. The pace looked average. I still don't really know how I feel about the Aston Martins 2 races into the season. I don't know how well they're going to improve or decline throughout as the season goes on. Haven't gotten a lot of action with them, but I have him as a 5 out of 10.
Okay, for sure. And I see. I kind of think a little low of the car itself. I don't think the car is up to standard, which is why Lance Stroll has kind of impressed me at the start of the
Hmm.
season. He has been looking pretty solid. I can't lie. And P9 in the sprint, P9 in the race. I went with a 7 out of 10 on Stroll just because I do think he outperformed that car. Of course, the race he did get points because of the disqualifications itself, but nonetheless, he still had a pretty solid performance.
Oh, I was very impressed with Stroll. The whole weekend, I was impressed with him. He's looking like a completely different driver than he was last season, in my opinion, especially at the end of the season. Like, didn't expect anything out of the Aston Martins, and now we got Stroll in points in 2 races in a row. Like, it's crazy. It's crazy. I have him as an 8 out of 10. I think he's overperforming the car. I think he's overperforming his own expectations going into the season. I've been fairly impressed with him.
Okay. Yeah, no, I don't mind that pick. I can't put him like ridiculously up to an 8 because I put Alonso at a 3. So I and they were pretty solidly close in pace itself, but I do see the sentiment there. I do have to ask, what was your favorite team to watch over the weekend?
Favorite team to watch over the weekend?
Yeah.
Oh, man. I mean, it was nice seeing Hamilton get a sprint. I'm never gonna say I was excited to watch Ferrari. We're just gonna get that out of the way now. No,
Okay.
but uh, honestly, it has to be Haas just for how the race went, right?
And that's why I got Haas next up. I figured you were going to say Haas, which is why I asked that question with Esteban Ocon. What are your thoughts on his overall weekend?
Oh, dude, Ocon had a great weekend. Like, I would not expected a Haas P5. You know how we felt after episode one. I didn't expect anything out of this car. So the fact that they came in and scored points and scored the points the way they did. I know he had some disqualifications. Who cares? Ocon P5. He had a fantastic race. He had a fantastic weekend. I had him 8 out of 10.
And not to take away as well, but we were looking at like Australia. The Haas was looking like the Kick Sauber of last season. They were
Mm-hmm.
really looking bad. And then Esteban Ocon, even without the disqualifications, was P7.
Yep.
So finishing P16 in the sprint wasn't really a great finish for him, but the P5 in the race itself, I personally went with a 9 out of 10. I thought that was like to outperform Haas that well. I'll give him the credit.
Just at.
He's arguably the driver of the day.
It felt like he would just it was came out of nowhere. It really did. Um. Yeah, it was fun to watch for sure. What are your
Yeah.
feelings on the other side of the Haas?
Oh, Behrman, for me, personally, on Sunday itself, I think he was the best driver. Just the way he was overtaking, the way he was positioning his car to gain momentum on the car ahead of him. I mean, that overtake he got, I forget who it was against specifically, but he did the switchback at the hairpin, which didn't complete the overtake. Then on the next turn, he intentionally got DRS and braked earlier to give the other driver horrible momentum to get the free overtake into turn one. That was a brilliant itself. He started in P17, finished, it was P8 in the race, of course, with the disqualifications, where he still would have finished P10. I personally still went 8 out of 10 because Ocon, he did get the qualifying positions that did get him the good result in the race, but still, fantastic performance from Behrman.
So we're gonna get into some of my decimal ratings. Obviously, Behrman did have a great race, uh, but he did get outperformed by Ocon, and I have Ocon as an 8 out of 10. So I went 7.5 out of Behrman. But again, just the Haas in general, just above and beyond what they looked like last week, even. So I mean, the improvement from Australia to China was magnificent, and the way Behrman was driving, the overtakes he was making, it was a completely different performance out of both of them. But yeah, I was very impressed with Haas.
Yeah, in my opinion, the best driver pairing of the weekend.
For
Uh,
sure,
but
I'd agree.
but we'll definitely get more into that as the next team, which I think is another interesting one to talk about. Especially when you compare the teammates, because it has been reported that they have been using very different specs on their car. But Williams, an interesting one, especially Alex Albon himself.
hmm
What are your thoughts on his weekend?
Oh, the sprint was okay, but the fact that Albon has been consistently getting in the points, consistently being ahead of Signs, that's not really what I expected going into the season. I don't really expect anyone thought he would be outperforming Signs the way he has been throughout the season. I have him as a 7 out of 10. I thought he looked great in the race, getting P7 even with his qualifications. Yeah, he's just outperforming his teammate. We know what they talked about the specs on Signs' car. Doesn't I don't really think it's that big of a difference to me. I still think Albon's been having a great season so far, and I expect this Williams to continue to improve, and I expect even better finishes from Albon in the future.
Yeah, I don't really need to add to that. I kind of feel very similar with it. I went 7 out of 10 as well, and I don't want to reiterate what you said. I feel the exact same sentiment about it. And Carlos
Oh.
Sainz, again, I don't think it was. This one's a hard one to talk about because I do think he really didn't look that great over the race. But then again, we're talking about it being lower specs. What do you think personally? Because I'm curious about your opinion here.
I think he has the lower specs because they do feel like he has more talent as a driver himself. So I think they're trying to balance it out right now until they figure out what they want to do with the Williams car. Obviously, we think a lot of the specs are going into 2026. Everyone's trying to get ready for the new regs. I didn't. It's still not the pace we're accustomed to sign seeing, even with the lower specs. I wasn't really impressed with the weekend. I didn't think he did like bad per se, but I had him as a 5 out of 10 for the weekend. He got outperformed by his teammate, and like he scored 1 point in the feature due to DNFs or disqualifications. So not anything too impressive out of him for me.
Yeah, and again, it seems our opinions are pretty similar in this. I do actually, my opinion on him using the older specs is just because they're not going to throw signs in and make him the primary driver, especially with Albon there. And now
Mm.
he's been the past couple of years being the primary over there. I still also think signs 5 out of 10, especially he was super unimpressive in the sprint race, even though he did somehow manage to beat a couple other drivers with a pit stop. But
Yeah.
there was a whole situation with that, which we can get on to later, but Signs was
Oh.
definitely not there with pace with Albon, but still not a horrible weekend.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then the next one, I guess we could talk about a big reason why Signs was even able to beat anyone in the sprint. Jack Doohan, shout out. Jack Doohan
Oh.
taking out other drivers in that sprint race towards the end on that hairpin. Horrible late breaking move. And what are your thoughts on his race overall and weekend?
Well, obviously sprint wasn't impressive, especially the last lap. Uh, he was able to sneak up in the P13 in the feature, but I wasn't really impressed with his pace. I haven't really been impressed with the Alpines in general, but yeah, Doohan's not looked that great. Um, I don't know, man. Just not a move you should be making there at the end, and it just was not a good look. Uh, didn't really impress me in the feature. He is probably my low. I'm pretty sure he was my lowest rated, second lowest rated driver. I have him as a 4 out of 10.
Okay, and that's interesting. I think a lot lower of him personally. I think his P13 was gifted to him by horrible strategy disqualifications. I mean, we had four people DNF or disqualify combined. You had Yuki Tsunoda who had that wing failure and had again horrible strategy himself. So you're already looking at five cars taken out of the equation. There's the P13 isn't really
A
that impressive
P13,
to me.
yeah.
Yeah, like I went 2 out of 10 with it because he did get the last place result in the sprint race itself. His qualifying wasn't outstanding. There's nothing really that was outstanding about it. He didn't like completely bin the car. He wasn't the last by a lot, which is why I don't give him a 1 out of 10. But he really wasn't great.
That's fair.
But
That's
then
fair.
with
Ah,
Pierre,
good,
sorry,
good.
go on. Okay, because I was going to go into Pierre Gasly after, who he was one of the drivers who got that disqualification. Um, Even then, he didn't really look incredible throughout the weekend. His pace again, like a lot of the other midfield cars were beating him. When you're looking at people like Albon, the Haas, and stuff like that. Personally, I went with the 3 out of 10 because I do expect a lot more out of Gasly and the Alpine itself. But what are your overall thoughts?
My biggest thing with Gasly is I don't really know if it's the drivers or the car for Alpine at the moment. Um, we expected more out of the Alpines going into the season. I don't really think the pace is there like a lot of people thought there possibly could be. I think this is a lower tier car in my opinion, so I'm not going to rank Gasly that bad for it. Obviously, he had the disqualification. He finished P12 in the sprint. Not anything too impressive. But I do have him as a 5 out of 10. I think it was average, and I think we're starting to see more of there's a deeper lining with the Alpine car than rather there's the drivers are underperforming in my opinion.
Okay, and it did look kind of bad in China, especially when they came out in qualifying and both drivers were out in Q1, and it
Mm.
really did look like it was going to be a rough weekend for them. I did kind of expect a result like this. But one team that has had been very exciting for me the rest of the season is those two Mercedes drivers. Uh, I personally I've been loving the way George Russell has been driving this season. He's been keeping it steady. He's been keeping it clean this entire time. He's going to keep racking in those P3 finishes. I personally gave him a 9 out of 10 because he's just getting the best out of the car. He's not winning the races. Can't put him at a 10 out of 10. If he's in a good enough car, he does have the chance to win races, which is why that's the only really stipulation for a 10 out of 10 for me, unless he did something crazy in the race. But 9 out of 10 is still exceptional.
Absolutely, and I think we're on the same wavelength. I also have him as a 9 out of 10. I mean, this is right where we thought Mercedes could be. We're seeing like the height of where we thought Mercedes would be at the start of the season, and Russell is getting every bit out of that car that he possibly can. Um, Not anything you can take away from his race. Like you said, the only stipulation for a 10 out of 10 is also winning the race, which obviously it's hard to do when you have those McLarens in front, right? So
Yeah,
obviously Russell got the best that he could out of that car, got, personally the best finish that I think he could have gotten in the race outside of one of the McLarens just straight bending it. Yeah, I was super impressed with Russell, and I've been continuing to get impressed with Russell going into the season. I think he'll continue this pace. It'll be nice to see if Mercedes can make some upgrades to see if Russell can start, finding his way back into this driver championship if he has a shot. We'll see. But yeah, so far super impressed with Russell. And then swapping to that to Kimi Antonelli. What are your thoughts on him?
I thought first off, him getting driver of the day ridiculous. I don't know where that came from on Sunday. That was even he was shocked by that. But he didn't get the most out of the car. Similarly to George Russell, he beat the drivers he needed to beat, other than Esteban Ocon. Finished P7, finished P6. I gave him a 7 out of 10. He had an all right performance. He was pretty decent, but nothing to go crazy about.
I mean, I know it's the Mercedes, but this is right where I kind of expected Kimi to be. Um, he's doing exactly what could be asked of him from Mercedes. He's gradually getting in points, or consistently getting in points, not gradually. Getting the most he can. He's obviously a rookie. I don't expect him to be up there, fighting next to Russell every single race. But I think he did exactly what he's expected to do. So I personally, I gave him an 8 out of 10, slightly above you. I still think it was a great performance. Obviously, we'll continue to see that Mercedes improve. I think we'll continue to see Kimi improve. Yeah, P7 is pretty solid position in my opinion.
Yeah, for sure. And then another underwhelming rookie throughout the season, or I call him a rookie, um, even though he only raced in half a season prior. But Liam Lawson, very underwhelming comparative to Kimi Antonelli, and I had a very high expectations for him. Of course, how much could you talk about it being the car? Um, Probably is a good amount the car itself, but I still went with the 2 out of 10 because two P20 qualifications is not acceptable, no matter what. If you're in a Red Bull, I don't care how good the car is, you got to do more.
Yeah, I mean, obviously in Japan, we're gonna see how much of it is the car. We'll see what Sonoda can do with it. Obviously Lawson is back to Racing Bulls now. But Yeah, he definitely showed more pace than he did last weekend in the sprint and the race itself. Obviously,
Yes.
quality was terrible. I don't know if it's just a Lawson quality issue or how bad this Red Bull is, or if Lawson just doesn't have the pace that people thought he could going into the season. I personally had him as a 4 out of 10. Obviously, he showed some pace in the race in the feature, but those P20 qualification, like that's bad. That's just straight bad.
Yeah.
There's no second guessing around that. But yeah, he's down there at 4 with a couple of these other drivers. I just wasn't impressed with this weekend. I didn't really rate anyone low. No one seemed to like bend it super bad like they did in Australia. Obviously, the weather was better, but that's kind of why I don't really have anyone in the 1 to 2 range. Because we know what the paces of these drivers and stuff are. But it was, pretty much what I thought Lawson would do this weekend. So that's why I'm as a 4 out of 10.
For sure. And then to oppose to Max Verstappen, I think you could say similarly to Max Verstappen as you could say to George Russell. Um, did the got the most out of the car, which is what you could ask about. I also went 9 out of 10. I think he was on equal playing field with George Russell throughout the weekend. Of course, he was talking about the car being horrible, so you could
Mm.
argue that George Russell did have a better car, but still, great performance overall.
I don't have anything to add to that. I also have him as a 9 out of 10. Uh, the only thing he could have done better is win the race, really. And, obviously with how he's talking, it's going to be hard to do. It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
I don't know when we'll see a Max Verstappen win this season. Yeah, it was a solid performance out of him and Russell for sure.
Would be a shocking season if Max Verstappen doesn't get a win somewhere. That would be
He's going to get one.
shocking.
He's going to get one. For
Yeah,
sure. But that would be
he
wild.
has to.
Maybe Mercedes comes out of nowhere with some upgrades and Kimmy and Russell start stealing some wins from him. That'd be funny. But
Yeah,
we
yeah,
got
for sure.
2 teams left. Which one you going to first?
I think we should go with Ferrari first. I think this is going to be a fun one to talk about. I thought both of the drivers were actually really exceptional. We could start with Lewis Hamilton, the sprint winner. He looked great in the sprint itself. Did struggle with the tire wear on the feature, which did cause him to lose a position to Max anyway. But I think he was losing it anyway. Would have finished P6 without the disqualification. I personally had him at an 8 out of 10. Gave him the high benefit from the sprint, which did really bulk him up. But he did get outperformed by Leclerc. Had those tire issues, which did drop him to an 8.
Fair enough. I have Hamilton as an 8.5. He looked fantastic in the sprint. He was the fastest driver on the grid by far. Then he had some tire issues, like you already mentioned in the feature. But yeah, the sprint was super impressive. It shows that the Ferrari can have pace when it wants to. It shows that Hamilton has the pace when he wants to, when he has in a position to win a race. So I was very impressed by that. I have him as an 8.5 out of 10.
Okay, sweet. And then Leclerc, I also kind of think somewhat similarly to him. He just didn't really have the sprint win, but he outperformed Hamilton in the race with a broken end plate on his wing, which was super impressive itself. It was probably his own fault why he did that in the first place, but the fact that he was still able to put his car into a P5 position without the disqualification happening, he would have finished P5 in both, which is a pretty solid performance. I gave him a 7 out of 10 for that, but not better than Hamilton just because of the sprint win.
I also have him as a 7 out of 10. Um, Pace is obviously there for Ferrari. They're gonna figure it out. They can't just keep winning it the way they have the last 2 races. Strategy has not been helping them either. But yeah, despite he was keeping it on track, he had a good race even with that wing off. Now some could say that which wing broke off actually helped him more than hurt him.
No,
But even so, like you have a broken wind plate, you're not used to that aerodynamic difference. Like a lot of factors played into play, so that was nice to see. Obviously, they did get disqualified in the feature in the end. They obviously didn't get a race win like Hamilton did, so that's why I have him down as a 7.
yeah, and I will say that did not make him quicker. There was like he was struggling, especially on turn 14 because of that. It
Mm.
did not make him quicker. It doesn't make any sense aerodynamically why he would be quicker. So the fact that he was able to do that and still be faster than Hamilton was pretty insane.
Yeah.
But again, he still caused the damage. But another team that the team that's been on top right now, that's not. I guess it's interesting to talk about just because there is the dynamic between the two drivers and
Hmm.
who we really do think is the better of the two. Obviously, Oscar Piastri. outperforming Lando throughout the entire weekend. What are your thoughts on his overall weekend?
Oscar Piastri was great, man. Uh, Obviously, you have your teammate win last week. You have that mistake, you go off track, you're able to get back on track, you still finish in the points, so you're keeping yourself, in the talks. And now you need a dominant performance going into China to prove that you're not just the driver too, that you have a chance at this championship as well. And Piastri checked all the boxes this weekend. He made a push, he got the race win. Uh, he bounced back tremendously, and so when we're talking, it's a huge dynamic for the drivers' championship too, because we're talking about Norris and Verstappen, but Piastri, he has that rocket ship as well. If he can continue chaining performances like this, he has a real shot at the Drivers' Championship too. And so I think he did a great job bouncing back from Australia. I have him as a 9.5 out of 10.
Yep, and I also have him as a 9.5 out of 10. The only thing that would have made him perfect was winning both races. He did incredible in the feature itself. He was kind of getting challenged by Lando towards the end, but then Lando did have those brake issues. But overall, he did keep it really good on the track and didn't really have any issues when he needed to push. He did push, and that's what managed to get him the performance that he did and really put him in the conversation for the championship. And Lando Norris, personally, I think like he did really struggle, especially at the beginning of the weekend. Started picking it up towards the end, and then had those brake failures towards the end of the feature race, which still did get him into P2, which was
Hmm.
impressive in its own. What are your thoughts?
I'm gonna ding him a little bit for the sprint. Obviously, he didn't have a great qualifying. He lost positions in the sprint as well. Um, so he obviously was outperformed by his teammate pretty much all weekend. He did find some momentum with pace there towards the feature, but overall, I have him as an 8 point or just an 8 out of 10. Uh, yeah, I mean, wasn't as good as last weekend, of course. Didn't get the race win, but he still finished P2. He's still holding strong in the Drivers' Championship, so it's about as much as you can say about Norris's performance.
Yeah. For me, I do think he's in the best car. I do expect a lot more of it, especially in the sprint itself. I mean, the
Mm.
race you can't really ask for more. He did finish where he really needed to, especially with the issues that he did have.
Yep.
But that sprint was horrible for him. I mean, the he should have finished in the top five at least, but he was having trouble controlling the car from practice into the last qualifying session, and then that race itself, he lost those positions. I gave him a 7 out of 10 for that reason.
Fair enough.
I just expect more. So overall, that's the ratings for everyone. I guess we can go into who do you think was the rookie that impressed you most throughout the season so far in the first two races?
I mean, it's got to be Kimi Antonelli, right? He's been the
Yes.
most consistent. He obviously has the most pace. You could make an argument for Bierman, in my opinion.
Yes.
Bierman is obviously improving a lot. But it's got to go to Kimi Antonelli, man. He's making the most out of that Mercedes. He's keeping up. He's been in points every race. He's just looking like the most consistent rookie on the grid. Doesn't make much mistakes. Is aggressive when he needs to be. Like, there's nothing really bad you can say about his performance so far this season.
Yeah. I also would say Kimmy. I mean, for the exact same reasons. Ollie Behrman was also the one person I'd make an argument for. I think he's been able to do a lot with a car that's not really the greatest. Of course, he did have a troublesome performance in Australia, but I also do kind of think Ollie Behrman's just not great in the wet. And I think that is going to come to bite him in the future. I mean, he looked horrible in Brazil. Granted, a lot of people looked horrible in Brazil,
Hmm.
but I'm intrigued to see what he does when the conditions change up more in other tracks that might be a little less tricky because the Australia conditions and the Brazil conditions, to be fair, were very difficult to manage in general.
Yeah, for sure. I would agree with pretty much all of that. But yeah, it's just impressive to see. Mercedes not really missing a beat without Hamilton, so it's obviously good to see from their end. Um, yeah, I'm interested to see what the Haas's can do too. I don't know if this is a one-off or if Haas really has found something in the car that can give more space or more pace, or if it was just China fits their car better. I don't really know yet. So Japan's gonna be fun. There's gonna be a lot of storylines going into it. The last thing we have to finish up the podcast. Who is the most improved driver so far in the season? I think you and I might have the same answer on this as well, but I'm curious to see what your opinion is first.
Interesting. I actually think there could be a differing opinion. I'm not 100% sure. I went with Alex Albon. I think Alex Albon, yeah, the way he's outperforming Sainz again, he does have a better car from the reports. So I'll still give him that notch, especially a little bit of a better car can result in multiple position gains. But he has really done what he needed to do. He's in a very good position in the Drivers' Championship itself. I've just been overall impressed with his performance, and he's already catching up to what he was able to do in an entire season last season. So for me, Alex Albon.
Alex Albon, eh?
Yeah,
Who do you think mine is before I say it?
Lance Stroll.
Lance Stroll.
Yeah.
No, it's Alex Albon.
Oh,
What all the struggles Williams had last season, all the money they put into fixing their cars, all the talks about them focusing on their 2026 car, they're bringing in Sainz to focus on the 2026 car, all this talk about Sainz coming in and how he's gonna upgrade them. Albon obviously is still the driver one, but a lot of people haven't really been talking about him going into the season. And the performances he's put up the first 2 weeks of the season are incredible. I mean, just incredible. Like what Williams has no business being in the points where he was, and the fact that he's outperforming Sainz consistently, and it's not just outperforming him, but his pace is just overall better. Both weekends it just looked better, flat out. You can say all you want about whatever regs that Sainz is running. Albon has been having a great season. I don't think it's going to stop after these two races. I think he's going to continue getting into the points and showing that he still has pace in this league to be a driver one.
absolutely. But overall, that's all I got for you personally. I don't know if you got anything to add.
I don't think so. I think we touched all the topics. I can't wait to see Japan. Obviously, we hinted briefly, but Tsunoda now in Red Bull. He's finally getting his shot in his home Grand Prix with Honda watching. Um, but yeah,
How do
it
you
should
think he's going to perform?
better than Lawson. Yes. Is he going to be worse than he was in the Racing Bulls? Yes. I don't think Tsunoda is going to be in the points. Um, I think he'll get out of Q1. I don't think he's getting out of Q2. If I had to just guess going into it, I'd say Tsunoda would get like P13 quali, P11 finish maybe. That's
Oh,
pretty much where I see out of him.
no, this Grand Prix speak in P14.
P14?
Yeah, that's just what I'm feeling. A P14 out of Yuki Tsunoda, a P9 out of Liam Lawson.
A P9 out of Liam Lawson would be crazy.
Yep.
I think it'd be more funny. I think Liam Lawson's gonna finish P10 and Tsunoda P11.
Oh, that would be like a second ahead of Tsunoda as well.
Yep,
Like overtakes him like he did Checo in Mexico or whatever, like that battle.
that'd be hilarious. But yeah, that's gonna be the biggest dynamic I think going into Japan is just what are these two drivers gonna do in these other seats? Is this second Red Bull as bad as everyone's been saying? Obviously, Max was even outspoken about it. He was really pissed that they did this to Lawson. Like he knows how bad the car is. He's driving the first one. He's has all the problems with the first one as well. So it's a crazy car. It's a crazy handling car. Um, do I think it'll fit Sonoda's driving style better than Lawson? I do. I do think Sonoda's aggression
Yeah.
will better fit this car. If they can fine tune it to something that fits right with Sonoda, maybe he will have a good performance. But I don't really expect him in the points. I'd be very surprised if he is in the points. Um, but yeah, I'm looking forward to watching it.
Oh yeah, for sure. And Tsunoda does prefer oversteer on his car as well. So we'll see if that is something that comparative to Liam Lawson, if that works. So
For sure.
for sure. But anyway, we appreciate y'all for watching the pod, especially through. It was another decently long one. We have another pod coming up as well. We're going to be shooting some more SNS related content. Coming up very soon, especially with the season ending. There's going to be a lot more to talk about, so I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely, I can't wait to start integrating SNS content into this. Obviously, we have one more race of Tier 1. Tier 2 is hot and heavy. A lot of fast drivers on that Tier 2 grid, man. It should be interesting to watch, see some of these guys get some Tier 1 spots going into next season. The fact that we've had as amount of race winners that we have, the battle for the championship's hot. So it's going to be fun to watch.
Absolutely. All right. Well, thank you all for watching. Y'all have a great day.
Yep, thank you for tuning in to Just Stuff. We'll talk to you guys later. Peace.